I don't know if it begins this year or last year with doing a lot of layoffs, and I've already
Well, they've
did.
done both. Yeah.
Yeah, they've
I
been
mean,
doing lots of layoffs, and that includes publishing deals. And then they've already announced 4 games for the PlayStation and PC, and even the Switch. And people are doomsaying, or whether they just feel like Xbox is dying because of it. And it turns out it's just Hi-Fi Rush. I think there was another game too. Oh yeah, the Sea of Thieves, and there's 2
Sea of
Obsidian
Thieves
games like Grounded and Pentiment.
and yeah.
Yeah, so they're already on the other systems, and it's just to see if Xbox tests the waters. And now, like I would say, 1 or 2 days ago, they shut down 4 studios, and
hmm
that would include, I think it was a mobile developer and another one. I don't know if you have a
Roundhouse
Roundhouse.
Studios, Arcane, Tango GameWorks, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what the fourth one was now. Oh, I feel bad. Let me get the notes up.
Yeah.
I mean, the main one obviously is Tango. That's the crazy one.
Yes, so
Uh,
as I need to go through in the whole details here, the developer Arkane, I think it's Austin or Texas where they are. I think it's Austin, and they've been
Austin,
working on what?
Alpha Dog. Sorry, it was Alpha Dog Studios, and then Roundhouse hasn't really been closed. It's been uh, consumed by Elder Scrolls Online. So the people who are working at Roundhouse Studios are now part of the Elder Scrolls Online team in ZeniMax Online.
Well, to be honest, this one has recently got flack for being transphobic towards the employee and has some really bad systems there, and they should be under fire for that. But all of a sudden, it's just another studio gets merged into this whole thing, and I'm like, well, that's kind of sucks, doesn't it? And also, I
Yeah.
know that lots of people have been playing Elder Scrolls Online, but I think it just seems a bit shitty, really. But speaking of which, as I was trying to say, Arkham Austin, I think you can tell this is exactly coming because the Redfall didn't particularly work out and it has turned
Yep.
into a huge commercial failure. So it's no
hmm
surprise that this studio got shut down, which is also disappointing because they're part of the umbrella that, even though it's not exactly related to all of the arcane games of some sort,
Yeah.
because the ones behind Dishonored or Prey or some sort, they're not affected.
So Arcade Austin were the ones who made Prey,
Oh,
which is a really good game, Prey, which I really enjoyed. But a lot of people left, and I think they said it was like an 80% turn. I can't remember the exact numbers, so I apologize if it's a bit off. I think it was like an 80% turnover between people who were in Prey and people who were working on Redfall. Because basically a lot of people left because they didn't want to make a multiplayer vampire game, and you can see why, because the game was awful. And it's a
yeah.
shame because that game, like Prey, was such a good game, so underrated. It's like Bioshock in space a bit. Like that's pretty much what it is. It's so good, and it's such a shame that they didn't get to make a second Prey. That game was so good. Yeah, so that's a good one, but obviously the most tragic is Tango. I think for most people.
Yes, I think that's a bit of a shock, really, because Hi-Fi Rush, huge game of the year, and turned out extremely well. That even got
Yeah,
awards, and didn't win a lot of awards, but it's certainly turned into such a great game.
yeah.
And when it came with the PS5, it got even more popular, and now people are viewing more of a memes based on Hi-Fi Rush, which is really good. And then
I
Microsoft
mean,
turned around and chopped that studio down, and that's not good. And that means no more Evil Within 3.
yeah. I mean, wasn't Hi-Fi Rush your game of the year last year? And I think it was our
Yeah.
combined game of the year, if I remember. And also, if you weren't fussed on Starfield, it would probably be the best Xbox game that came out last year for a lot of people. It did really well. And then Matt Booty today has come out and said we need more small prestige games that are award winning. So, well, you had a studio that did that, and you've just closed them down. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that this is just baffling because oh, we need more games like Hi-Fi Rush. Well, you already closed down the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush. I mean,
It doesn't make any
and you
sense.
even like brought the studio over. What is going on? Like, you're supposed to like keep your
Baffling.
studios to make those kind of games, and only for you just like close down studios that otherwise add something unique to their catalog. I mean, oh my
Exactly.
god.
I mean, I feel like Chai of 404 could have been, was it 408? 408 could have been
Eight or
like,
eight.
yeah, they could have been like mascots for the Xbox brand. You could have had them on the box and stuff. It was such a successful game and it did really well. This is their only Japanese studio, and they were talking about how they want to get Xbox into Japan, and they've closed their only Japanese studio down. And it is a successful studio. They made one of the best games they released last year, and it sold really well, and it did really well. It doesn't make any sense. That's the one that makes any sense. I can in a way I can understand Arkane Austin being shut down because of Redfall, because Redfall was dreadful. Uh, but even then, I'm like, well, you shouldn't have really done that. You could have given them another chance because they were making a game that Bethesda wanted them to make. Like, because Bethesda were in like a, like PlayStation are in this live service mode now where they want to make a load of live service games. Bethesda was doing this about 5 years ago, where that's why we got Fallout 76. That's why we got Redfall. That's why we got Wolfenstein New Blood, I think it was. And they're basically trying to make different types of games to try to get new audiences in before they sold. And then Redfall was kind of like it was like a thing that just was still in development when Microsoft bought them. So I feel like they haven't had the chance to have a Microsoft funded game, Arcane or Austin, where they could have done what they wanted.
Well,
They didn't have the freedom.
what about Fallout 76 and Wolfenstein New Blood? Are they still
Well,
going?
yeah, they're still going. Yeah, that was the
I think it kind
yeah,
of vindicates my views there, but we get to that soon. But yeah, with the
yeah.
four studios closed down, we can safely say that Hi-Fi Rush, after they got over to PlayStation 5 and no longer Xbox exclusive, as well as them like their studio being shut down, you can definitely tell that this game is like the most fucked of all the four that's been affected by Xbox. Because you have the studio shut down, meaning unlikely it will have more sequels. And even though it goes multi-platform, and they're supposed to sell more Xboxes, so you can definitely tell it's just been completely messed around.
I mean, Evil Within. Like, so we're talking about Hi-Fi Rush, which I was one of my favorite games of last year. Is amazing. Within is it had such potential to be like Xbox's Resident Evil series. Like Davey and the PSP Trust guys. Well, I'm not sure about the other guys, but Davey really liked the Evil Within 1 and 2. And if you get a PlayStation guy like that to want to play another Evil Within game, then you can, it's a genre that they haven't really got many games in. Essentially, it's like it feels like Xbox are just doubling down on open world RPG games, which I like. Don't get me wrong, but it just feels like Bethesda is now literally just the Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and Starfield studio now. That's all they're going to do with like those type of games, remakes of those type of games. That's what it sounds like anyway. Because like they said, they're going to focus on big games or I can't remember the wording they used for it. It was some kind of
Uh,
like
is it quadruple A games? Is it?
no, I can't remember what they said. Sorry, this week we didn't have as many. We usually have a lot more notes. We were kind of.
And don't worry, but we do have a lot of things off our chest anyway. But interesting you mentioned about the in PS We Trust guys,
High
because
impact titles. Sorry, that was the word. They're gonna prioritize high impact titles, a.k.a. Starfields, Indiana Jones, stuff that's gonna be like basically the quadruple A that you said. Yeah.
yes.
So and then today Matt Booty said that, as we said earlier, he wants more smaller titles. So make your mind up, Xbox.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, Matt Booty, like, it just seems like as if it's a Matt bootlicker because it just seems like he says Microsoft and says something out of his own boot.
That's good. Fruit liquor, full bad fruit.
But yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
just
don't
like
know.
essentially saying out of his own boot and just say like, "Oh, we need more smaller games." And this is like as if it's part of a meme where you just literally shoot shot like Tango Softworks, and then now asking for
Yes.
some of the games of Hi-Fi Rush. I mean, what are they smoking? Are they just smoking some
It doesn't
green
make sense.
stuff? Kids, this is
Yeah.
definitely damaging
The
the
Xbox.
health of this whole company.
I feel like it's Microsoft's, like, I don't know. Like we heard when we were saying earlier, we were talking about the 4 games coming over to PlayStation. When that rumor was going around, there were like a lot of people were saying it's like it's infighting civil war inside Microsoft. Like you have like Team Xbox and Team Microsoft, and they're like butting heads about what they want to do with the company going forward. And this feels like a fallout, no pun intended, from that situation. Like some kind of like this is like a repercussion. Like I feel like this is Microsoft wanting to slim down the Xbox division a bit. I don't know.
It sounds like a
After
Labour
yeah,
Party,
we
though.
just bought. But they basically they bulked up Xbox so much with all these studios, and now they're like, oh, let's just cut this, cut this, cut this, cut this, cut this. It's weird. Like, why even bother buying all these studios if you're just
Well,
gonna cut a lot of
interesting you
them?
say
It's weird.
that, but before you do that, I just need to finish off and saying, in PS3 Trust, guys, yeah, you want
Yeah.
us, you're likely to bring Lewis over there, and I know because
Um,
he's like the biggest Xbox fan, and you definitely love to pull him in for some like shits and giggles. But don't forget to bring me
yeah.
too, because I have a lot of stuff on my chest about this, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we're gonna make your episode lit, like the flaming
Yeah.
hot edition of in PS3 Trust. Also,
Yeah.
gayness as well.
Gayness. What? Where'd that come from? Yeah, I think it's just because I'm easier to troll. Like, if you listen to their latest podcast, they're trolling me the whole way through it. Like, literally, like, oh, Lewis would do, Potatochief would do this. Oh, like the last episode, they were talking about how I'm a wuss because I don't like horror games, and they also said that
And yet you say the
I'm a
Starfield
nerd,
is
an Xbox
best.
nerd.
Yeah, you literally say the best Starfield is the best since sliced bread.
Yeah, I would say the Starfield's better than Last of Us Part Two. There you go. That's a quote the PlayStation, the PS Trust guys can go for.
But anyway, but yeah. So you say that the Microsoft is being like slicing the company up, right?
Oh,
Well,
just like picking off stuff. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's a good analogy.
recently they're now planning for more cuts across the board, and that means jobs, possibly more studios being closed down. And yep, it's just a. I would say what something wicked this way comes.
Yeah,
You can definitely tell because there's a wicked rich for the West, and it's like
yeah. I mean, we're a month away from this big Xbox showcase, so they're going to be showing off all these new games. But if you like keep killing all these studios, then you like it's weird. I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like they got this. They got Game Pass, which is their subscription service. They want to get people in, right? Then they have like a pipeline of all these smaller games and big games that get people into your system. But now you're killing off all the smaller games. But then you're saying you still need small games. It doesn't make any sense. And then you're selling your games on the PlayStation. Like it just feels like Xbox don't know what they're doing at the moment. It feels like there's people going in multiple directions. I don't feel like they got one like vision. They're not like sticking to it. Like as much as we can slag Nintendo off, you do like they kind of like they stick to one path and they just stick to it, you know. Whereas Xbox just seem to be a bit scatterbrained at the moment. They don't seem. I don't
yeah,
seem to know what they're
exactly.
doing. What are you doing? No one knows what you're doing, Xbox. You're so confusing. Like we're like the big fat Xbox fans. We're doing an Xbox podcast, and even I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what they're
I
doing.
wouldn't
I mean,
consider myself to be a
well,
serious
I am.
Xbox fan, so it kind of leaves you that you can tell by the background they use full on green.
Green boy. It's also because my walls like crashed, so I need.
Or they could be
That's not
your
important.
eagle, brimming in green.
Yeah. But
I would
yeah,
say,
it's
I would say it's just more like an Xbox eagle box,
Xbox.
really.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the place. Again, I was listening to PS3 Trust this week. They were talking about how Xbox is like going to just be dead in the next couple of years. I don't think that's the case. I just think they're moving into a different kind of market. It's weird though. The way I don't. I don't know how you can justify the Tango Game Works one personally. That's a weird one for me. And then also, as you just said, Double Fine. That's a worrying one.
Yeah, that's
Should we get?
that's right. And I was gonna mention that I've been listening to the podcast episode. So as soon as
Mhm.
this whole Studio Closures thing happened, I just turned to kind of funny games casts, which are now they
Yeah,
got rid of the Xbox and PlayStation podcasts, which is a bit
yeah, I
sad.
know.
They're
Yeah,
not really depending on Rooster Teeth, but Rooster Teeth the Rooster's been like bought out by someone else, but the
yeah,
kind of funny is already restructured, and now they're focusing on
yeah,
more generalized games cast. And in the
yeah.
latest episode of the kind of funny game cast, they said
Yeah,
like in the episode has Xbox lost your trust. They have said so many things, and there's so many things that I would definitely stick with. And one of the things
yeah.
they noticed is that they definitely know the Double Fine is the next target because
Seems like it.
Tim Schafer has
Is
some
it?
creative freedom and doesn't have a lot of like production input into this, and the corporations deal with it. And also, there hasn't been a lot of anything new or interesting since they released Psychonauts 2 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's a weird. I hope they don't get rid of Double Fine. That's a strange way. Because basically they were trying to build up as an independent for years and try and make money and stuff, and then they got convinced to join Xbox. And they've only just joined Xbox, even though they have been there for a good couple of years now. Uh, I hope not. I hope not. I hope it's like. I was like, in my head, I'm like, there's no way they would get rid of Double Fine, but then I'm like, but they got rid of Tango. Like you can't like that don't make sense either.
Well,
So I can't logic them out anymore.
I think it just seems like the Tango down, and now Double Fine is likely to be not fine.
Hey, you love your puns. um, I don't know. It's like I've said this in previous episodes. 2020, we all went into COVID. We all were locked inside. We all were playing video games. The video game industry was booming. People were buying video games and in droves. Everything was selling crazy well. Obviously, the Xbox Series and the PS5 just came out. They were limited to stock, and all this stuff. Anyway, basically, Xbox, PlayStation, all the games companies were like, we're gonna keep selling this amount of money, and we're gonna keep making money at this rate, and we're gonna keep making more and more and more money. And now people actually can go outside and touch grass again. Their sales are going off a cliff. Like now people are out. Like I love video games, but there's a lot of people who don't really like. They'll go outside and get drunk, or they'll go do something else with their time, which is fine, I suppose. But basically, game sales are on the decrease now, so now they're panicking. They're like, what can we chop? What can we get rid of? Where can we save money? And it's just like now, PlayStation are panicking. Xbox are panicking. I feel like the only company who doesn't seem to be panicking is Nintendo. Maybe they are panicking, but we just can't see it. Like they're like a swan with their feet going under the water.
Well, I think the game kind of funny games cast have been like rather pessimistic, as they're saying, which I seem to agree with, that one, people are now going to be afraid of failure. They need to
Yeah,
succeed and make money in order to prolong their franchises. And if they fail, they're going to get penalized substantially. And second thing is that these companies do not really care about all of the exciting stuff of the customers. They care
no,
about satisfying the stakeholders in this because they
yeah,
need to make sure everything they make is profitable and is something that satisfies them. I don't know how
yeah,
exact is their wording in this whole thing, but the reason I agree with those kind of things because for many years, games industry used to be about people making games and creating something that is likely to innovate or getting people to be interested in all of this.
yeah,
But now, like as it has been developing for many decades, you have people who now like try to make everything and make sure it runs like a business. And it holds true for the games like Halo Infinite multiplayer,
yeah,
Fortnite, and even Overwatch 2, where they are literally trying to sell you with so many cosmetics. And it's
yeah,
literally turned from like getting a fraction for each copy sold to getting paid more than just the retail price. Or if it's free,
Yeah.
they still get loads of fountains of money from all the cosmetics they sell. And that's
Yeah.
all they care about. It's just they need to make sure they try to milk the customers' wallets, trying to make sure it's enough profitable, and they need to be able to grab people's attention instead of creating something that is absolutely creative. And this is the
Yeah.
state of the games industry as it is, really.
Sad. It's sad, and it's not just Microsoft. Unfortunately, it's all the companies are like this at the moment as well. It's really sad. Like innovation is like gone down the toilet. Like essentially AAA games. They can't, as you said, they can't risk anything. They can't make anything risky. It's going to be is everything sequels or remakes or remasters or like is everything like same as Hollywood. Everything's got to be safe. You can't do anything too risky. The only things that ever like come like out of the box are like basically indie games. Essentially, if you want new, innovative, interesting things, you got to go into the indie space. Essentially, like the AAA space is kind of horrible at the moment. Honestly, I feel like I'm an old man, but I honestly miss the 360 days. I really do. Where games took like less time to develop and they were a bit more interesting and a bit more varied. Now it just feels like everything's just like it takes 5 years to make a new game, and they're all sequels and remakes of games we've already played.
Yeah,
It's sad.
well, interesting you bring that up because about 20 years ago, you'd be seeing more sequels, and you thought, well, that's a bit sad. And now it's like even more sequels happening. It takes more time to
Yeah.
develop. But,
I mean, I don't want. I
but
was gonna say like if you just watched the recent video game donkey video, I know he's not the most reliable source of information. It's just hilarious. He's like basically talking about remakes and remasters of games, and literally every game he comes up with, it's like, oh yeah, they've remastered that like 6 times. It's like, oh, they'll never remake Elder Scrolls, and then they show like Skyrim like 6 different copies. Oh, they'll never remake Resident Evil, and they like 6 copies. They would, and it's basically like it's hilarious. Watch it. It's on his channel. It's like 3 minutes. It's just
yeah,
literally him talking about how many remakes and remasters there are, and even games you've never even heard of are getting remakes and remasters, which is
not
just nuts.
not just the 21st century games, 90s and 80s games being remade.
Exactly.
And guess what? Nintendo just recently like mentioned the World Championship NES edition, and that
Yeah.
includes NES games complete with challenges. And they've been re-releasing that stuff many times. And same with Soul coming out about a year ago or some sort. So
Yeah.
they're not just like re-releasing all the 3D games, but also 2D games as well. So that's a state of
Yeah.
games as it is.
It's depressing. And then also, I was listening to listening to the PS Trust guys. If you like PlayStation, listen to them because they're great. They were talking about how there's so little like PlayStation 5 only games, and most games are PS4 and PS5 that they had to straddle the line a bit. Like
Yes.
God of War Ragnarok is on PS4. Basically, there's literally like only a handful of games. And it's the same with Xbox. I think it's like Flight Simulator and Forza Motorsport, and I think there's a couple of others, but there's not many games that are like current gen only either. So it's like it's a weird time to be a games fan.
Yeah.
Just for yeah. So
I would have to like say that interesting you mentioned about the Hollywood's creativity. Well, Hollywood is quite literally it's pretty much creatively bankrupt, and you can
yeah,
really see this in games too. Even the Stephanie Sterling has mentioned one of the reviews as one of those companies have been creatively bankrupt, and I think it just pretty
hmm
much says about a lot of those games that like you'd be thinking this if you get all those new Sony games to come out on like say the PlayStation 5 is either it has to come from the indie developers it's just unlikely to be heard or seen and we haven't been talking about a lot of that Stray. That's a really original title that came first on the PlayStation 5, but the
yeah,
biggest titles to come from Sony are like God of War, Horizon, and even like yeah, and there's not even like any Sony titles this year, and instead you have like Stellar Blade and Final Fantasy Remake, which is
hmm
literally first-party PlayStation 5 exclusives. But it's just really depressing. You know that the Rooster Teeth is closing this week, and Monty is like made Ruby.
yeah,
Well, he when I just looked back on his old videos, and he did some like really cool kung fu s thing, the like bit
Yeah,
like Matrix. And one of the
yes,
videos, as I noticed as it was posted on YouTube, it's like there's a snippet that came from the video that originally came on game trailers, and he said that, well, I love to like do some original franchises, but the reason I made things like Haloid or something like that is because
yeah,
the Hollywood or any animation is film industry doesn't particularly trust on original ideas, and they
yeah,
have to rely on brands to make them relatable. And that's how Monty Hume got really popular with the likes of Haloid and Dead Fantasy. And even Ruby is just a plot that he doesn't particularly want to expand on so much. And yet he's been making some like stellar original franchises, which doesn't seem to get anywhere. So, like, even before his passing in 2015, he knows something is wrong with the creative aspect of the industry for decades.
yeah. It does feel like we are just coming into an era now when it is just about money, microtransactions, season passes, $70 instead of $60, subscription models, uh, remakes, remasters, releasing everything on PC, and now Xbox also releasing everything on PS5 and on Switch as well. When they it's just basically how can we get the most money out of the customers, and that's all it is at the moment, which is really sad. I know it has always been a business, but it did also feel like there was some kind of creative force behind it that wanted to make creative games. But now it does just feel like it is just about the money, which is just sad. And like closing down a team like Tango Games Works, it baffles me because I'm sure Hi-Fi Rush 2 would have sold really well because the first one was really popular and the second one would be even bigger, I think.
Also, it just
And
seems to
yeah,
allow for more reactionary creativity. Like with Star Wars, used to be under Lucasfilm and now it's like sold over to Disney. And guess what happened? Like
yeah.
Force Awakens is a nostalgia trip through Star Wars. Then The Last
Mm-hmm.
Jedi tries something new and tries something to be more like, let's just say, try to go against the capitalist thing or go a little bit different with the political things and do
Yeah,
the opposite of what they feel with the original. And then Rise of the Skywalker scraps, retcons all of it, and then decides to
yeah.
go back to what Force Awakens works, and only to end up trying to regurgitate a lot of the things that could have been left in the past. And it just
I mean,
seems like
control.
as if they want to create things and they're just trying to react to the customers there because it's just like
Mhm.
as if they are listening to the outrage. It's like, well, lots of people have been complaining about it. We just keep on going and build an iron stomach, or they just like listen to them a bit too much and try to modify the writing just to make sure they do sell without having to keep on going and risk alienating customers because of what they don't like.
Well, basically, if you think about the original trilogy of Star Wars, you had 4, 5, 6, yeah, Return of the Jedi, New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back. That was all the Star Wars we had, really. We had a couple of little things now and again for like 30 years.
Yes.
And then suddenly we've got prequel trilogy, then sequel trilogy, then we got spin-off movies, then we got spin-off TV shows, and then it's just like, oh, it's too much. And now people are fed up with Star Wars. Like Star Wars was like the most popular thing ever. And now it's kind of everyone's burnt out on it. And the same with the Marvel universe. Basically, I think Endgame was the peak, and ever since Endgame, people have kind of not really had any interest in it. Or a lot of people have dropped off, including myself. I used to love Marvel. I've kind of fallen off the peak. And it's just essentially just milk, 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 milk. And that's what Xbox sounds like they're doing with the, as I said, they're going for high impact titles. Essentially, like, what games could we just keep reselling over and over and over again? To me, that sounds like let's remake Fallout 3, let's remake Oblivion, let's resell Skyrim for the 100th time.
You know,
Let's just, it's sad.
I think if
Oh, it bums me
anything,
out.
Luke Skywalker kind of seems like a representative of this. Like back then, he's like the literal hero and something you can trust, and that's been like that for
Mm-hmm.
30 years. And I was like so into like Star Wars. My sister doesn't like it, but I just still like checked out Star Wars, and I even seen like episode 1 in the cinema. That was 30 years ago, and Star Wars is still hip and trendy. And I've been collecting Tazos of the original trilogy. It's like absolutely fantastic. But now
Yeah.
they Luke Skywalker, the biggest moment is when he grabs a bottle, milks an alien for blue milk, and drinks it. Guess what that film appeared in?
Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
Controversial. Controversial take. I actually like The Last Jedi. I think it was alright. It was decent. There was a couple of bits of it which sucked, like the casino planet and stuff like that. And Rose was a horrible character, but they had some really good scenes in it as well. Like when Kylo Ren and Rey were like fighting back to back against the army and stuff. I thought that was fucking cool.
In one take, and one camera. Amazing.
Oh, so good. Hey.
But then it's just got all retcons in the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
But you can definitely tell, like, how Star Wars used to be a precious thing, and 3 films is just absolutely what you need. And any of those spin-offs and books, you'll be okay with it. They just hasn't been advertised that much. But now the Disney wants to give you everything as if you really care about, and try to watch all of them so they can add to this whole lore. And yet, with the Marvel MCU, it used to be really cool. You got the Avengers, which is I thought it's impossible. But now it just seems like as if they've been throwing so much shit to it. And then they just forgot what made the MCU great in the first place. And now it just seems like the last great thing you can get is X-Men 97, which is literally the 6th season of a classic X-Men in the 90s. And I feel this is what Marvel has been reduced to, trying to rely on nostalgia for success.
I think it also was like as we've been saying about milking franchises. Like, I think if I remember correctly, like Phase 1 was like 10 hours, Phase 2 was 10 hours, Phase 3 was about 10 hours, and then Phase 4 has been like 100 odd hours of content to watch. Because there's like 5 or 6 different TV shows and movies, and they're all canon and they're all tied in together. It's like, you don't like, this is why people don't read comic books, because they're like, oh, where do I start? I don't know where do I start? Well, you can start with this comic book from this series, but it's not canon towards this, but it's also in this universe on this planet. This is Planet 48, and you could go planet, but then they start commenting to this one. Actually, DC just rebooted this whole series. It's like, oh, so I was like, yeah, no, just calm down. Anyway, we've gone off track a little bit here, but it's just capitalism bad. Boo.
Right. Now then, I think I'm going to bring up this interesting article because there's some couple of tweets that, let's see, I'm trying to find those tweets from the I think there's some interesting bits there, but I'm just going to find an article where 2 of the people have been responding to it, and because at the moment there's one from Hourhead who made Helldivers 2, which recently made the news because PlayStation tried to force the PlayStation Network link on the PC version, and people revolted, even with lots of negative reviews, because they do not trust the PlayStation Network. So it just seems to be quite interesting. But anyway, the CEO of Hourhead Studios has said, I don't understand the closure of Tango Gameworks. I mean, why close instead of divest? Surely the team would easily have been able to find a new home.
Yeah, I like Arrowhead is like a really good success story. Apart from obviously this whole controversy the last week or so. Yeah, I don't think anyone understands the Tango one. You're gonna have to ask Xbox or Microsoft why they've done that, because it doesn't make any sense to me at all. They got small prestige titles that are done well. They have a good IP. They're popular, and they're in Japan, which is all things that they want from a studio, right? I don't understand it. It's baffling. Really don't get it. And people in the industry don't get it either. So I honestly don't understand.
Now,
it's weird.
There's also the Moon Studio CEO, Thomas Malher, who pointed to the situation with the Tango Networks and stating why the company was never sold to the big publisher. And that's when he did mention that. To everyone who's been pestering me for years about why we didn't allow Moon Studios to get acquired by a big publisher, that's why. I lived through the 90s and saw what happened when smaller studios were acquired by EA. Never again. You see, it's not new. When the studios got sold to EA, it just turns out they either get closed or they perform worse. Like, you see what happened with BioWare. I don't know about Citroen Games or some sort. They end up making more Need for Speed titles, but I haven't heard. But there's Free
Yeah.
Radical, who's been making Time Spurs Future Perfect for EA. Got up with Microsoft and then got shut down. And there's several more studios that even got shut down, like Visual Studios of some sort. But yeah,
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about a lot as well. Is that Phil Spencer and all that in Xbox, we've ever since the botched Xbox One launch with Don Matrick, it's been good guy Xbox, good guy, Xbox and the good guys with the like pro consumer, yeah. But it's like,
that's a
oh,
that's a
but I'm
lie.
wondering well, they've tried to become pro consumer. You didn't even let me get. I'm getting to my point. I've been wondering when that's going to turn. Like, when is the penny going to drop, and when they're going to stop being assholes again? Because they were assholes in the beginning of the Xbox One generation, and I can imagine, I've been waiting for them to be like, but we need to make money. Like, oh, Game Pass is a great service, but we're going to hike the price up by another like $10 or £10, and then, oh, this game did well, but not well enough, so we're going to close it. Like, this is what it feels like. We're on the They're turning to the dark side again, which I don't like. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but it does feel like, yeah, we're starting to get into negative Xbox again, which sucks. As I hate, yeah,
Thomas
they've
has
been the good
also
guys for a while, but it don't last, unfortunately.
Thomas also continued that it could very well be that Microsoft already had prior discussions of these studios and decisions were made to shutter these studios in order to let them reform in a more efficient way, only to then make deals with those new ventures again. Let's take Tango Gameworks for example. They just
Hmm.
made an excellent Hi-Fi Rush, which everyone rightly loved. And maybe the way to make more of this stuff is for that core team to form a new venture so that they can focus on making more of just that, but not within likely bloated setup they had before. So I do wonder whether
That's
they're just
interesting.
trying to mess them up in some way.
That's interesting. Cool. Well, they said that's what happened with Toys for Bob. Like, Toys for Bob left Activision / Xbox to go independent. Then they slimlined it all down, and now they're saying, "Oh, we're happy to work with Xbox." So maybe that's it. Maybe they built in a new studio with the people from Tango when they're like slimlining it. Maybe that's a possibility. That's an optimistic take. I'm still the cynical take that they've just closed it down because money. But I like that take. Maybe it is. Maybe they're restructuring and this is the better way of doing it. Like, starting from scratch. I don't know.
Oh, there's another thread from Brad Hildebrand, who's once part of Microsoft Public Relations and has
Yeah.
made uh, a bit of a chunk of a LinkedIn post, which is on LinkedIn at the moment, and said that so games like Hi-Fi Rush, which is incredible, mind you, gets a very small bump in revenue from being the hot Game Pass game for the month. Then it falls off the cliff when everyone moves on to the next thing. Poor Redfall had it even worse since it launched so rough it never had a chance. This system was fine for the while when Game Pass is growing like gangbusters, but now it's slowed way down and the amount of revenue it's attributing to games isn't keeping up with the budgets to make them. So far, the big bets on driving new subscriptions haven't spurred near enough growth, and there's not much on the horizon that is likely to restart the momentum. The best bet is COD, Call of Duty, but do you really risk the guaranteed sales revenue that franchise brings by putting it on Game Pass on day one and potentially lose massive sales? I don't know what the plans are, but either you put it on Game Pass and lose money, or you don't and the subscribers revolt because they think that's what they signed up for. Ooh.
Well, the Call of Duty one I always find interesting, like, because honestly, I feel like Call of Duty makes more money on the back end than the initial $70 sale. I think getting people into the subscription is like that's fine. They'll make money from you signing up to Game Pass, and they'll probably have a load of people signing up to Game Pass, and then they go, "Oh, here's the season pass, here's the DLC, here's here's the microtransactions." Essentially, Call of Duty is a free to play game that you have to pay £70 to
Mm.
play every year, basically. And they still make loads of money even after the initial sales. So I don't see that as a. I don't see Call of Duty being a problem when it comes to Game Pass. It's the other games on Game Pass is the issue.
That's the
It's just the best
problem.
deal in gaming. That's the problem. It's the best deal in gaming, and it's like people are still not jumping. The more people on it, I guess. And
That's
like honestly, if you, I think it's the best deal in game. I know you don't like agree with me, but I
well.
do.
Listen. That is the besides the point. Like, I know the Game Pass really helps other people, and for people to just like slag on it for like ruining revenue of the games is, I find that quite disappointing because I do feel it gives people more options to be able to try them. But
Yeah.
but my point I was going to make is that
Well,
I know you'll probably be saying those things because I unsubscribed from Game Pass early this year, and I haven't got back to it. I'm happy with what I got,
it's fine.
but then the real problem is not to do with like having so many games onto it, and it's not about like having huge franchises on it. You got to need to have new games coming over to the Game Pass, and if you got other closed down studios that made huge hits like Hi-Fi Rush, I'm not sure
Yeah.
about Redfall, but they've been making like those great games and they bring them over to Xbox. But now these games either had their studios closed down or they've been
Yeah.
sold at being bought over to the PlayStation 5 like Grounded and Pentiment, and I just feel like, are they really trying hard enough to bring some new innovative games over to Game Pass? I mean, this
Mm.
is what they need to do. But at the moment, it just seems as if they're not proving the worth of this whole Game Pass when I obviously feel that they should be focusing to bring fresh ideas into the table than just like treating it as if it's the Netflix of things. It's like the Netflix, only you don't have a lot of like new stuff coming in. I mean, what's going on?
I mean, they are bringing new stuff in every single month. I think that's a bit unfair. They do bring in new stuff all the time, but
But then you see a
I
lot
don't
of
think they promote. I don't think they promote it well enough. Is what I'm saying. I feel like Game Pass needs like a Super Bowl ad, or it needs a bit more mainstream crossover advertising. It feels like they're only advertising to us, the hardcore gamers. They feel like they need to promote it more to like the casual people who are like, oh yeah, you know you could pay £15 a month and play Call of Duty, FIFA, and all these hundreds of other games. Like that's a selling thing.
well, I think your argument that just comes up like the
You
fact.
can get people on board, but I don't feel like they're doing that. I feel like they only, like, as I said, they're only aiming for us. And we're like, well, I'm already sold.
Well, I think your argument is like, well, they're bringing in new stuff all the time, but I think there's
Yeah,
been a lot of indie games coming in. But what I mean is like, what about Microsoft and Bethesda when it comes to bringing bigger games over and something that is likely to get marketed a lot? Like, are they gonna need much bigger titles than just relying on just indie games that is guaranteed to come on Game Pass? Like, granted, the Power World is good, but it hasn't been
um,
marketed. But it got really popular because lots of people have been talking about it, and yet not a lot of people know about Game Pass, and they can. And the reason they signed up for
weird.
it is so they can play more games on Xbox. Except people are relying on Steam and the PlayStation more, but now it's just everyone. It's like now relying on mobile stuff and PC stuff as well.
Yeah, I don't understand why the Game Pass has not been taken off as much as I feel like I adore Game Pass. I think it's a great service. Use it all the time. But maybe I'm an outsider. Maybe people don't play as many games as I do, or as different genres as I do. And they do bring new stuff on here all the time. It's like there's new games every month. I'll have to have a look what's up this month because I haven't checked. But they did just put Jedi Survivor on there, which is like essentially only came out a couple of months ago. They got a load of new games on there. I haven't got the latest drop. I'm just having to see if I can find it
Well,
this week.
while you're looking at it,
There's,
you said you were planning to play Fallout 76, right?
possibly, I was considering it because I've been in a Fallout mood ever since watching the TV show, and I got Fallout 4 on my wrong ally. So
Well, I think you should really check out. There's Phil Spencer's camp, which you might be a bit late to
Oh
find
yes.
because it got nuked to death after the studio closures.
Yeah, but that was hilarious. I love that. That's such a funny troll people do. They nuked Phil's camp. Uh, it's good stuff. That kind of stuff I really appreciate. I mean, that's really funny. I mean, yeah, it's hilarious. It's like this is for Hi-Fi Rush, you idiots. I was trying to bring the list up, but it's not coming up. Okay. Uh, Tomb Raider Definitive Edition. That's pretty good. Then you got Hellblade coming this month. That's the end of the month.
Yes.
Uh, Just Cause 4. Uh, that's a bit old, actually. Just Cause 4, but I can see what you're saying in some way, but I do think it's a really good service. Personally, I think PlayStation's slowly catching up to it, which is nice. I think it's good for consumers because I've been working class background. I didn't have much money growing up. I would have loved this as a kid. Just having a subscription where I can play hundreds of games every month, even if they are some smaller games or slightly older ones. I think it's a great service,
It,
and it's good for people who are a bit money strapped at the moment and can't afford to pay 70 quid for each single game. You know,
well, it kind of
yeah.
reminds me that, um, like, you said that, like, back in the 90s, like, oh, I would love to have that. Well, there's such a thing called Sega Channel where for subscription, you put this cartridge, you hook it up with Aerial, and you download Mega Drive games into it. I think it's only like
Nice.
available in some countries or some sort, like the Americas. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of a bit of a rare service where, like, Sega Channel, plug it in the Mega Drive and download stuff through cable. In fact, there's a lot of similar services for Super Nintendo in Japan or something like that.
yeah.
So they did those kind of stuff
Ahead of their
before,
time.
but that was long before the internet, which is why it hasn't been advertised to a certain extent.
I mean, you had Blockbusters, you had GameFly, you have all sorts of that as well. It's been a thing for people wanted cheaper alternatives, and honestly, games like Persona and all that, I would have played unless or Yakuza. I would never play Yakuza or Persona if I didn't have Game Pass. And they're two of my favorite franchises at the moment. I love them; they're both great, and I would never have even tried them if it wasn't for Game Pass. So there you go. That's the
Well,
way I see it, anyway.
actually,
Anyway, got
you
off
mentioned
topic a bit
you
there. Anyway,
mentioned about Hellblade 2, and this is where we go to the next thing. Because with all the
yes.
closures and all the negativity around
Oh yeah.
Xbox, I think we could be looking at Hellblade 2, which is releasing this month, to be a Hell Mary. Ninja
Mm-hmm.
Theory has, as has been said in the kind of funniest Gamecast,
That's fun.
they have, it's been spent with a gigantic budget. It's been worked on for 5 years and has all the technology to make it such a like immersive experience, and is coming on Game Pass. So therefore, it is definitely Hail Mary, and it is something that could keep the Xbox going because there's literally,
Mhm.
I don't think we can get lots of titles unless June's showcase comes up. That it just all boils down to September to December, where we have an influx of all those new games that comes on Xbox and the Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, they did say that there's 10 games coming this year, isn't there? This is the first of the 10. So, like, we're in the fifth month of the year. We're only just getting our first new game when there's 10 games supposed to be coming out this year. Come on, Xbox. Spread them out a bit better. There is the first half of the year, Xbox. Games can come out before June. It's so annoying. Yeah, Hellblade 2, I think it looks incredible. I'm very excited for it. But it is a smaller budget game with like a smaller. It's like 50 like £40, £50, I think. It's 8 or 9 hours long. I'm really excited for it. I think that's perfect for me. I like a shorter game. I always complain about how I thought The Last of Us 2 was like 4 hours too long. I think like 8 or 9 hours is perfect for me. I think that's going to be great. But I am worried because this is not a game that's gonna they're not going to be putting microtransactions in it or extra skins or DLC or any of that. It's a one and done thing. It might do really well. It might get a load of game awards and stuff if it's like a 9 out of 10. If this gets a 7 out of 10 like Starfield, I do think that like literally they will be like Ninja Fury is done. This needs to get like perfect scores. It needs to be up there with like the God of War Ragnaroks and all that kind of stuff as like game of the generation kind of thing for it to stand a chance of Ninja Theory holding on. Honestly, I think, and I hope it does. I hope it is a game of the generation. I really do, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't know. What do you think?
This is why I consider this to be the Hail Mary, because given all the negativity with Xbox recently, Hellblade 2 has got to succeed. I don't have any plans to play it on the launch day, but I would imagine you would. But the original Hellblade, you said like 40 quid. Well, it's currently like £25 on the Xbox store, which is now discounted as part of the Xbox sales. So you can get it for about 6 quid. So if you haven't had a chance,
Ooh.
check it out. And then once you get to Hellblade 2, hopefully it will turn out great and something that is worth for the 5 years going into it. But we have to see how well, not to do with the review scores, but how much did it sell and how much profit would it make? Because we don't just like rely on the Game Pass sales. We also base it on the retail sales too, especially on Steam. That if it ever like works out, then Xbox will get on. But I think that at this rate that we might be able to see a bit of a struggle for Hellblade 2 unless Xbox has to show as if this is the most important game of the first half of the year. But if it's going to bomb, then Xbox is likely to be finished sooner than so.
Yeah, that's worrying thought, isn't it? Also, I was just thinking about it. Just like it feels like this whole generation, we'd be like, Xbox are about to get out. This is it. This is the year for Xbox. This is the year. This is the year. This is the year. And they've had fumbles and like they dropped the bag and all that. I feel like this is the year where Xbox can nail it, and they got all these games lined up, and now they're getting rid of all these studios. It's like you're finally in the place you should be, and now you're backtracking, and now you're like scaling down. It's like no, keep this. This is the pace we want. Maybe put a bit more games early in the year, but this is the pace we want. We want like 10 games a year. That's great. Keep that up. Don't start going, we haven't been that successful yet. Let's cut it down to 4 games a year or 3 games a year or 2. Like it feels like we finally get to the point where we're actually having consistent games from Xbox, and now they're like, actually, that's not working. So you haven't even given it a chance to work. You haven't even given us a full year of consistent games yet, and it feels like you're backtracking already, and it's like, oh. Like, it feels like we're finally in a good place for Xbox, and now you've done this, and now it feels like we're back to 2018 again. Bloody hell. Oh, so frustrating. It's so frustrating being an Xbox fan, I swear.
Well, I think it's just like all I can say is that I know you feel the Game Pass like deserves a lot of love, and you feel it's the best deal in gaming, and we hope it's true. We hope this is a case that it gives people more choice and more freedom to try out games. But the fact there's a lot of studio closures and there's even all the stuff going around that Xbox, the biggest titles to come to the platform, are going to be turned into Hail Marys. But I can assure you that based on what I've witnessed here, it makes me more certain that Halo could finally get to the PlayStation, and it's more likely that the next generation. Yeah, I know. I can see your face.
Oh, don't say that. Oh,
but the next generation is that.
Disgusting.
But
playing Halo with joysticks that are next to each other. What is this? What is this? How adaptive triggers on Halo? Oh no! Keep that away from me, Jesus!
Oh,
disgusting. I love PlayStation. I'm just joking. I'm kidding. I kid. But no, Xbox needs Halo's Xbox. Halo, don't do that to me.
Well, I mean, Halo Infinite might find a home on the PlayStation 5 to keep this whole community up. But anyway, but yeah, it's just like I just feel the next generation is, I don't know, it's a bit uncertain for not just for Xbox, but also with PlayStation, because PlayStation, you can tell they're struggling too, and now they're just going to put more of their games on PC and everything. And it just seems like now it just seems to give the PC side of things to have an extra chance, like Steam, Aces Ally, doing the handhelds, And once they decided to
Yeah.
do their own console versions, you can plug it into the TV. Then this just means Xbox and PlayStation are going to be left out in the dust.
Thank you for listening to the X Marks the Box podcast. Follow us at X Marks Box on Twitter or X Marks the Box on YouTube. And follow us on all audio podcast services. Thanks for listening.